Hi there. Welcome to Brampton Votes 2025, Provincial Edition. My name is Vijai Singh, and I'm the CEO of the Brampton Board of Trade. On behalf of myself and our members, thank you for making the time to watch these conversations. These provincial candidate interviews are a reflection of the Brampton Board of Trade's commitment to civic engagement, something essential for a strong and functioning democracy. Today, we have two very simple goals. One, to ensure that those who seek office in our community have an understanding of the issues that matter most to us. Secondly, it's to ensure that us, as voters, we have an understanding of where those who seek office stand on the key issues that affect us in our day-to-day lives. We know that regardless of whether one is part of government or in opposition, simply by being elected, you have the opportunity to shape policy and affect the lives of not just those in the province broadly, but those here in Brampton very specifically. And we want to make sure that we have confidence in those who we're sending to office. Now, typically, these types of conversations would take place in the form of a debate, where we had all candidates together and giving them the opportunity to express ideas and challenge one another. However, given the rapid nature in which this election came together, unfortunately, we were not able to get all candidates to participate. As a result, we instead made the decision to conduct a series of conversations with a moderator who will sit down with the candidate alongside a panel of community experts who will pose questions to the individual, allowing us instead to go a little bit deeper, give you the opportunity to understand who they are, where they stand on issues, and hopefully develop a really deep understanding of who it is that you'd like to vote for. These conversations will have some structure to them. Each candidate will have the opportunity to give a short opening where they'll explain who they are, what motivated them to run for office, and what it is that they stand for. Our moderator, Vijai Singh, who's the manager of policy and government relations at the Board of Trade, will then work with our panel to ensure that we get a fulsome understanding of where that candidate stands on critical issues that matter to us. Overall, we feel that we did a fantastic job with the candidates that we had, and we hope that you'll find these conversations informative. Now, I do want to remind you that if you do like the work that we're doing here at the Board of Trade, please come out and support us. You can find more about what we do at bramptonbot.com. We're always looking for more engagement in what we're doing, whether it be here as part of civic engagement with our elected officials or broadly in terms of the impacts we're trying to make in our community. Finally, I do want to remind you that it's important that you vote. Advanced polls open on February 20th and are open until the 22nd, with Election Day on the 27th. Every vote matters. Please make sure yours counts. We hope you find these conversations inspiring and also informative, and we look forward to having your feedback. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Brampton Votes. My name is Vijai Singh, and I'm the Manager of Policy and Government Relations at the Brampton Board of Trade. I'm pleased to be joined by Mr. Andrew Kania, the Ontario Liberal Party candidate for Brampton West. Mr. Kania, thank you so much for joining the Brampton Board of Trade this morning.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here, and thank you for hosting this.
Absolutely. And before we get into our conversation, I'll just go over the structure of what it'll look like. So we'll spend a few minutes just getting to know each other. I'll ask Mr. Kania some questions to understand him as a person and to allow him the opportunity to let you know why you should vote for him. And then we'll turn it over to our esteemed panel to ask pointed policy questions related to the community's priorities. So if that sounds all good, we'll get started.
Thank you.
Great. So Mr. Kania, maybe we'll start with this. Could you let us know who you are and what motivated you to run in this election in particular?
I will, but I'm first going to comment upon the format, which you've indicated about a question and answer session like this. This was supposed to be a debate. The Conservative candidate, Amarjit Sandhu, that is facing me, has refused to show up. He's been an incumbent for 7 years, and he's refused to come and answer the panel's questions and to face me, and to challenge him on his record, and to discuss why, the kind of changes that Bramptonians need to make their lives better. This is a democracy, and we're in the middle of a provincial election campaign, and he's missing in action. He's not here. That should say something to the people about their record. The same thing happened last week. There was a Y media debate, which I confirmed. Also, once again, Mr. Sandhu refused to show up. People should not be voting for somebody who refuses to come and answer questions of people about how they're going to make their lives better if they're elected. In terms of why I'm running, I'm going to say the same thing as when I previously ran and was the Member of Parliament for Brampton West, which is the truth, to do good. There's nothing else. I'm not going to give you a 10-minute speech. I'm going to tell you that's the truth. You need somebody who's experienced, who can actually handle the job, who's honest and hardworking. And I did that before, and I'm here to try to do that again if the people allow me to.
Thank you, Mr. Kania, and I'd love to hear your assessment of the last number of years of the Ford government.
There are so many issues, but let's discuss first why we're in this election campaign. We just went through a blizzard, a second weekend of blizzards, where you can't really effectively go to door and speak with people because everybody's trying to deal with this. Doug Ford and the Conservatives have violated the election statute. There's a statute in Ontario. It says elections are supposed to be every 4 years. Doug Ford has a majority government. When I became a candidate last December, it was with the knowledge that the election was June of 26, because that's what the law says. He violated the law. And his excuse was Donald Trump and tariffs. But anybody who understands this will know that he's just trying to scare people, because it's the job of the Prime Minister of Canada to deal with tariffs and the President of the United States. It's not Doug Ford's job. All he can do is, as he focuses on booze, put it on the shelf, take it off the shelf, put it in the corner store, booze. It has no power in relation to tariffs and the American president. And he just came back from Washington with a photo op, trying to make people think he was doing something. Well, if his job was to sit across the desk and deal with President Trump, then he failed because he got nowhere close to him. But he doesn't say that in his ads, but that's what happened. So people have to understand, first of all, why we're in this election. It's because Doug Ford is afraid to debate the real issues of concern to the people of Ontario. And I'm going to go through some of those now, because he's vulnerable on his record of 7 years. And when he makes promises, like in the debate, about what he's going to do, they cannot be trusted because he's had 7 years. A government of 7 years doesn't say, this is what I'm going to do to fix. They say, this is what we've done to help. But he can't say that. And that is also why, after the debate on Monday, the leaders' debate, he refused to speak to the media after to avoid questions. Yesterday morning, there was a press conference, which he canceled, and he's refusing to speak to the media. I think it's been a number of days since he's answered questions from anybody. How can you vote for a government that refuses to defend their record by taking questions from people who can actually put their feet to the fire? I'm here today. I know I'm not in government, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Great. No, thank you for that answer. And Mr. Kenny, I'd love for you to share. You are running in the Brampton West riding. Could you share your connection to that community in particular and what you love about that community?
Yes. I mean, I've lived in Brampton for 20 plus years. My law firm was in Brampton West until we moved it closer to the courthouse, but for over 20 years. I have many friends and family. The church in the riding there is where I go to. So in essence, this is my home, which is why I'm here, to fight for the people of Brampton, regardless of the election results. I want to fight for you and your families, whether we're in government or in opposition, hopefully in government, but either way, to be a champion for the people of Brampton. I know how to do this. I've been a lawyer for over 33 years. I'm a trial lawyer. I fight for you, is who I wish to fight for. And let's look at some of the issues that really matter to you and your families. And once again, I'll answer any questions, but there are predominant issues where the Ford government has failed. One, healthcare. I'm going to discuss healthcare, the major issues: healthcare, crime, affordability. These are the sort of the lists. There are others, auto insurance rates. We'll go through these, but if I have the time. But let's discuss healthcare. There are approximately 2.5 million people in Ontario without a family doctor. In December, before the election, in my riding of Brampton West, Bonnie Crombie came and made the promise that you've now heard throughout the election campaign, that every person would have a family doctor within 4 years. She will keep her promise. I know. We were members of Parliament together. She's an honest person, hardworking, smart. She will not break her promise. And I will, if I'm elected, I'll be there to fight for that promise. The second is, Brampton needs 3 fully functioning hospitals. Mississauga, where Bonnie was mayor, has 3 fully functioning hospitals. Brampton, as you now know, has a larger population than Mississauga. We have 1 fully functioning hospital, and people speak about 2. We need at least 3. How could we not need 3 when Mississauga has 3? So if I am elected and go to Queen's Park, regardless of the government, and you will hear this, I will be fighting to make sure Brampton has at least 3 fully functioning hospitals, and looking at feasibility studies for the future to ensure that we are planning properly. You can't say today, we need a hospital, when is it going to come? You have to plan for what we'll need into the future. Doug Ford had 7 years to deal with this.
Yeah.
7 years, and we only have one and a partial hospital.
We have some healthcare related questions. I can see you want to get into the issues, so we'll turn it to the panel now. So I'll ask the panel to ask some pointed questions, and if I could have you introduce yourself and the organization you represent, that would be great. And we'll start with Kate Saldana.
Good morning, thank you. My name is Kate Saldana. I'm here in my capacity as chair of the Brampton Board of Trade. My question for you, Mr. Kania, is related to housing and affordability, which you mentioned earlier. So the Liberal Party of Ontario has put forward a plan to remove development charges to make home building cheaper and ultimately improve housing affordability. How will your party ensure that cities like Brampton have sufficient funding for infrastructure after removing development charges?
And if I may, just for the viewers at home who might not know what development charges are, development charges refer to municipal taxes that are paid by developers and used for the purposes of funding infrastructure, roads and sewers and parks and so on and so forth, all of the things that are necessary for growth. And Ms. Crombie and the Ontario Liberal Party has put forward this plan to remove development charges. So, Mr. Kania?
Thank you. So, once again, my Conservative candidate should be here to answer these questions as well about the failure of funding in the region of Peel. As you're all aware, and I'm going to get back to this in a moment, there's also a pledge, because Peel is traditionally underfunded significantly. And there was a pledge sent around to the various candidates. I read it in about 38 seconds after reading it. I signed it and sent it back because we need to help the people. That's why we're here. So for housing, it's a tragedy that young people in particular cannot afford or dream of affording their own home. It's a tragedy that we have such homelessness and that people are forced to live to a certain extent in illegal basements. So we have to focus on making sure that our people are taken care of. Removing development charges, ensuring that there's more than that. There's also removing land transfer tax. But if you remove the development charges, you're going to reduce the prices of homes by thousands and thousands of dollars, so people can actually afford them, which is the point, so that people can aspire to that. So ultimately, in terms of affordability, it's a package plan. It's assisting with the economy so that people have good paying jobs so they can afford these homes, and the prices of the homes are then reduced because you have less taxes on them. And for the people who have homes right now, to reduce other measures such as reducing HST on hydro and heating. So for those of you who are struggling, this is something that the Liberal Party would do. And once again, I know Bonnie would do it because she keeps her promises.
And just to follow up on that, to get to the crux of Kate's question, I believe you referred to the pledge that you signed, and I'm glad that you did that because we're going to hear very soon from an individual with a vested interest in that pledge. But you're saying that the province should be doing more to make cities like Brampton whole. If we are going to be removing these revenue sources, the province will in fact step up. So.
Yeah, so you have to. This is going to get technical, which I don't mind doing as a lawyer, but there's a division of powers in Canada. There's the federal government, there's the provincial government. All municipalities, that's delegated authority. So ultimately, it's the province's responsibility to ensure that the cities are running smoothly, and and that they have enough funding. Yeah. And if they're not, then they have the power anytime they wish to step in and ensure that things are running properly. So yes.
Great. Excellent. Thank you for that. And Ray, we'll go over to you for the next question.
Thank you. Mr. Kania, it's a pleasure. Really pleased to be able to be here with you today. I'm here on behalf of the Metamorphosis Network. Metamorphosis Network, for those in the audience that might not know, is an organization that was formed, a nonprofit organization that was formed a number of years ago, back in 2014, to establish a position around the disillusionment originally of the Region Appeal. Fortunately, we were able to work with the board and be able to get that resolved and turned around. The second then major concern that we had was the lack of funding and the shortfall in the region. We acquired or commissioned a paper, the Blueprint company, who are very well respected, do a lot of work for government, both provincial and federal, and did an excellent report, identified a shortfall of $868 million a year, every year over year. $578 would be less in the pockets of the taxpayers, where that money was now had to be spent to create an opportunity to be able to address the shortfall. We're asking all the parties of the current campaign to sign on a pledge that you mentioned, and we're very thankful to you for doing that. And I am going to ask you what your motivation was to take that on. And the other thing is the Region Appeal just passed a motion. I did a deputation last week at Regional Council. You might know there was a unanimous motion passed, including the Mayor Parrish, who seconded the motion, and they're fully in favor as a regional council and encouraging all candidates to sign this pledge so that we can, one, educate the public and inform them about the shortfall and what that means, more importantly, what's the impact to seniors, persons with physical challenges, mental health concerns, homelessness, daycare, the list goes on. So Health and Human Services in total. We have 100 agencies who are part of our work, who are signing on to the work of the Metamorphosis Network and are very much behind what we're establishing. And what we're looking for is an ability to come to the table with the Premier and Cabinet to have a dialogue about fixing this problem. We have to establish, I believe, a new funding formula to be able to address the concerns that we're talking about and recognize there needs to be equity across Ontario, which certainly isn't the case if you read the Blueprint report. So please, if I could hear about those concerns and also about the motivation that led you to sign the pledge.
Sure. Well, it was easy to sign it, but I want to once again say why, two things. Why did my Conservative opponent, Amarjot Sandhu, refuse to sign it?
Mm-hmm.
He's the incumbent. He's been in power for 7 years, and he's refused to sign that pledge, and he's not here to answer why. He's not here to debate the issues. Why would somebody vote for somebody who is avoiding these questions and refuses to debate last week, this week? And in terms of my motivations, it's what I indicated earlier. I'm here to help, whatever that means. And this is the approach that I have. It's the approach that I had when I was a member of Parliament as well, which is to listen. It's not to pretend that on the spot I know everything about everything, because that's not how this works. You have to become educated. And I do it really like I do in my law practice, which is you listen and you meet with people and you're not afraid to meet with people and you don't avoid people and you don't avoid questions. You get all of the information that you can. You get experts involved in experts reports, and you read everything, and you ask questions. And once you understand and have all the information that you need, you're then not afraid to fight for whatever the correct solution is, whether you're in government or in opposition. So that's my approach, and that's why I'm here, because I want to help people. I did not grow up in a wealthy family. This was through both my parents were immigrants from Poland. In fact, my mother's family were refugees to Canada after the war. You wouldn't think that looking at me, but that's exactly what happened. And I grew up in a loving family, a religious family. We're Roman Catholic, and a family that taught me to be honest and work hard. And it was all education, which was education is a great equalizer. And when I was an MP, I fought for that. And that's something that I would fight for as well, because education is a provincial responsibility. So what we're looking to do is help people bring themselves up. There's removing interest on OSAP loans. I would be doing everything I could if I was elected to assist young people to be able to afford post-secondary education so that they can raise themselves up and help them and their future families. So that's why I'm here. It's very simple to help.
Thank you, Mr. Kania. And we'll go to our last question for this conversation. Kristen?
And strategic partnerships at a nonprofit called Achieve. We have several locations across the GTA, including 2 here in Brampton, that provide free services funded by the provincial government, particularly in employment and newcomer services. My question to you is about immigration and skilled labor. We know that over the next few years, there will be about a 20% reduction in immigration. What is your government's plan to ensure we have the right skills to meet our economic demands?
First of all, I hope we have a government on the February 27th election. So ultimately, Canada needs immigration. Okay, immigration is important for economic growth. There are issues like family reunification, which of course we want to support. But ultimately, we have to ensure that the number of immigrants coming into Canada help our economy and that we can take care of them so that people aren't homeless and we don't have these questions about how are we having enough housing starts, and so that people don't have to go to food banks. So ultimately, it's once again, immigration technically is a federal power. So it's the federal government that determines how many immigrants are allowed into Canada. It's the province's job, hopefully with the assistance of the federal government, but it's the province's job to make sure those people are taken care of. And I'd like to make this point, because this is really important. There's a distinction between the federal government and the provincial government. The federal government deals with the major things. But in terms of your actual daily life, the province of Ontario has more impact upon that. Okay? Those are the powers that they have. Let's talk. We can discuss other issues. Crime. Can we discuss that? Because that's.
Yeah, briefly, maybe in a minute.
You're leading, so I want to be respectful of your questions. So, but the point is that there's a difference. If you're in government and you have access to all of the studies and reports and people are meeting with you, or even if you're in opposition where you have these abilities, but not to the same extent, then you can make these decisions. So when people have been reached out to me during this campaign and they say, will you help with this, will you help with that? My response to them uniformly is, of course, if I'm elected, I will be meeting with you after the election and quickly. And I've said, as an example, I said, if I'm elected on the February 27th, on February 28th, I'm reaching out to Patrick Brown and I'm saying we need to meet and we need to see how we together can help the people of Brampton. That's one example. And I've said that to other people as well. So I'll say the same thing to all of you. You're very welcome to contact me if I'm successful, and we'll meet. We'll go through your concerns, not in a 10-second question, but in a meaningful manner to see how we can actually do things to solve these problems.
Thank you, Mr. Kania. And we are at time, but I would be remiss if I didn't give you a moment to share maybe some closing remarks.
Okay, thank you. So I want to tell a story about 2011 when that's the election that the Liberal Party was not successful federally. I was a member of Parliament doing good work here, I believe popular in the community, and the NDP vote went up significantly. And in the last few days of the campaign, there were Jack Layton signs all through the riding. And the NDP vote increased. I lost. The Conservatives won, and we got 4 years of Stephen Harper as a majority government. If you look at the polls and what's really happening right now, this is a two-way fight between the Conservatives, who won't attend debates, and the Ontario Liberals. Please, this election, coalesce your votes. If you want change, if you want to fight, if you want to help the people in Brampton, vote for me. I have the experience. I'm not afraid to fight for you, and I know how, and we'll do a good job. Vote Liberal, please. Don't split the votes and allow the Conservatives to come up the middle again and win when they're afraid to be here.
Mr. Kania, thank you so much for your time. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Brampton Votes. My name is Vijai Singh, and I'm the Manager of Policy and Government Relations at the Brampton Board of Trade. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Samuel Sarjeant, the NDP candidate for Brampton West. Thank you, Mr. Sarjeant, for joining us today.
Hey, Vijay. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And just before we get into the conversation, I'll explain sort of the structure of it. We'll have a conversation. I'll ask him a few questions. We'll get to know Mr. Sarjeant as a candidate and as a person. And then we'll turn it over to our panel for pointed policy questions related to priorities in the community. Does that sound good?
All good, yeah.
Okay, great. So to get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why did you choose to run in this election?
Yeah, so my name is Samuel Sarjeant. I am a fourth year international relations student at the University of Toronto. I've lived in Brampton for 21 years. Right now I do work in politics and organizing and in the NGO sector. I work with a nonprofit called the Young Politicians of Canada as their chief financial officer, and I've been an organizer with the ONDP for 4 or 5 years now. I love Brampton, and as I grew up, I realized that a lot of parties weren't looking out for Brampton. When I was in high school, the Conservatives cut the programs that I cared about, the clubs that I cared about, the funding that allowed me and my friends to succeed. And in 2015, when I was excited for Justin Trudeau to come in and change this country, I was sorely disappointed, and I became disillusioned with both the Conservatives and the Liberals. But when I saw folks in the NDP like Brampton Singh, Gail Bannister-Clark, Sandeep Singh, I found people that were principled. I found people that cared about Brampton and that wanted to really improve this city. So this year, as I went and looked for apartments and houses and tried to make my way into the world as a young professional, I realized that the situation in Brampton, especially for things like rent and affordability, is not where it needs to be. And I realized that it's time that I start living out my principles and trying to make the community I grew up in a better place.
And that's fantastic. Thank you for that answer. And you are running in the Brampton West riding. Could you tell us a little bit about your connection to that riding?
Of course. So I grew up just on the other side of the border in Brampton South on Rogers Road near McLaughlin. Not near McLaughlin, near Williams. And most of my life was in Brampton West. I went to middle school and high school in Brampton West. I did business in Brampton West. When Navjeet Kaur Brar ran for city council, I was canvassing 3, 4, 5 days a week, talking to folks in Brampton West about the kind of problems they have, about the things that concern them in their life. And I realized that this is the kind of community I wanna run in. This is the kind of community I feel connected to as someone who spends a tremendous amount of time here and would like to hopefully raise my family here. And that's why I decided to run in Brampton West.
Excellent. And I feel like I can say this because I'm also young. I'm a millennial, so I notice you are quite young and you're running in this election. And could you tell me a little bit more about that experience?
Yeah. So I do a lot of youth organizing and things like that, and it feels like the political system has a gap where it doesn't really care about youth. Youth don't vote. We don't. We don't go out and vote. We don't really go out and volunteer that much unless we're in high school and we need the hours. We don't participate in our communities. A lot of businesses don't really care about us because we don't spend a tremendous amount of money. The world doesn't really care enough about youth, and I think it's time to change that. People like us are going to be the people in 10, 20 years that are running these organizations, that are running businesses, that are bringing the world up, that are bringing this province up, that are running the government and voting and participating. And the more that we can access young people today, the more that we as young people can access the system today, the more influence we can have, the better lives we can have, and in 20, 30 years, the better our kids are going to live. So I think that it's important as someone that is, the ripe young age of 21 to get involved and to be a person, to be an actor in my community.
Excellent. And my last question before we turn it over to the panel is, say you do get elected on February 27th, it's good news. What are your priorities at Queen's Park?
My priorities at Queen's Park are the priorities of everyday people in Brampton. First, it's getting out of this mess that the Doug Ford government has put us in terms of affordability, in terms of poor funding for transit and municipalities, and in terms of not building housing in the last 30 years as a province. These are going to be my priorities, making sure that life is more affordable for people, that groceries are on the table, that housing is affordable, and that we can live good, dignified lives in Brampton.
Excellent. So I'll now turn it over to our panel, and I'll ask, when I turn it over to you, if you can introduce yourself and the organization you represent, that would be wonderful. So we'll start with Kate Saldana.
Thank you. My name is Kate Saldana. I'm here in my capacity as chair of the Brampton Board of Trade. Mr. Sargent, my question for you today touches on something that you had mentioned, which is transit. With the population growth that we've seen in Brampton and no doubt will continue to see, what is your party's commitment to expanding public transit, including two-way all-day go, as well as the extension of the Huron-Ontario LRT?
That's a huge issue in this community. We have bus lines that are over 15,000 people in capacity every day, which is just incredible. If you've ever rode on Brampton Transit, you would know it is highly used, and I'm sure you have, Chair. So I personally go every day to school in Toronto, so I take that GO line, and it is packed. It's packed, and it comes during the day roughly every hour. It's not great, especially if you go from Brampton Innovation District, which has a 3-hour gap in the middle of the day for some reason. Looks like transit, funding from the province doesn't really want to make sure that we, can get effectively from here to Toronto. In terms of transit, the NDP has a few big things. First, we need to make sure that we have two-way all-day service at higher frequencies, and that we don't have that big gap in the middle of the day for folks that are coming from Mount Pleasant, which is in Brampton West, and then folks that are also coming from the downtown Brampton Innovation District station, which is just outside, I believe. That's one big thing. Secondly, we need to make sure that the 407 is a public asset again, that it is free for people, that it is free for truck drivers who right now have to go on the 401 and on the 410 and deal with terrible traffic. I've got a friend that goes to work in Toronto and Scarborough every day, and he is taking a 1 or 2 hour commute home when he could be taking from Scarborough the 407 all the way back to Brampton much quicker. The 407 is so poorly used, a plane landed in midday traffic. It's terrible public policy. It's something the Conservatives have said they would look at, but when we put in Freedom of Information requests, they have no documentation on it. And frankly, it's something that they're not going to do. It is something that the Ontario NDP government will do, because we need to make sure that folks from Brampton are getting to work quickly, getting back from work quickly, so they can spend more time with their families, and also not have to pay to use the 407, which was and should be a public asset.
Yeah, and I on that note, I mean, I do have a car, but I like yourself, I use transit as often as I can. The previous government, the PCs have, they are pursuing the Highway 413 project, and most recently have announced a tunnel under the 401. Mm-hmm. What is your personal perspective on these projects, and what is the perspective of the party?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I want to be clear, the 413 project, the tunnel under the 401, what a waste of taxpayer money. Are you planning on spending $10 billion to dig under an existing highway before we purchase back a highway that's already there, that's underutilized, and that connects places that need to be connected? What kind of I challenge anyone in the Conservative government to justify this decision to me. Why are we doing this? There's absolutely no reason. We need to make sure that we are funding the kind of transit that people use, which currently is not the 407, which should be. And we need to make sure that we are funding the kind of transit that, frankly, people should be using, like more train services, which is not only good to get people off the road and onto trains and freeing up the road for more drivers, but it's good for people who want to fight climate change, right? To make sure that we are emitting less carbon emissions from the cars that, while great and while they can get you real fast, aren't the only way that we can get in and out of Toronto, right?
Thank you for that. And we'll take our next question from Ray Applebaum.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sargent, thanks very much for being with us today. My question, just to give a little bit of context first to the question, I'm representing the Metamorphosis Network here today, and I'm just delighted to be with you. We published a report known as the Blueprint Report, which identified a shortfall of $868 million per year for health and social services coming into the region of Peel. That actually translates for the taxpayers to $578 less in their pocket because of having to, meet that shortfall. We started the campaign a couple of years ago in terms of initially turning back the disillusionment of the region of Peel, and we were successful along with others, and were able to get the government to reconsider that decision, which, as you know, has been reversed. And we're now focusing on, have been for about a year and a half, on the financial impact on families, communities, to be able to look at what is it that people need to live today. And we've identified this major shortfall. We're now asking the government of Ontario to pledge themselves to meeting with us and working on a new funding formula that'll bring greater equity, not only to the region of Peel, but municipalities all across the province. We're not asking for more than others, we're asking for equity with others. So I know that you've signed the pledge, we're thankful for that. And I just want to ask you, what was your motivation when you got the pledge and you signed it?
Yeah, thanks so much. The region of Peel is underfunded. People need to realize that. And even so, Ontario has the lowest healthcare funding in the country. We are in a dead zone for healthcare. We need more investments, and it's taken now 7 years of a Conservative government saying, we're going to invest, we're going to invest, we're going to invest. We're going to have shovels in the ground on a new hospital by 2023. Newsflash, it's 2025. Where are those shovels? They're not here. When I saw the pledge, I was excited to see that people were still fighting for justice in the region of Peel. I don't trust the Liberals, run by Bonnie Crombie, who has said things about Brampton that, frankly, I don't want to repeat here. I don't trust them to make sure that the region of Peel is fully funded, and that's why I believe Bonnie Crombie and Doug Ford both have not signed your pledge. Marit Stiles, however, the leader of the Ontario NDP, has. She stands for this region. She stands for the people of this region, and she knows that we need to have fair healthcare funding. We need to have fair municipal funding to make sure that we have the resources we need to make sure that we're not getting so much money from the municipal government having to now tax us to provide those services, right? It's completely unfair. So here's our plan for healthcare. We're going to make sure that, of course, all the basics, everyone has a family doctor, right? We have 105,000 people in Brampton now without a family doctor. That means we need at least 82 more doctors here. We're going to make sure that we're hiring folks like nurse practitioners. Personally, a friend of mine has had a surgery scheduled in November and then pushed to December and then January, finally done in January. When they did it, they came in and they said, hey, what's up? What's going on? That's a surgeon. The surgeon didn't even know it had been rescheduled. That's how bad our scheduling is right now. Not only do we need to make sure that we are scheduling people on time, that people are not waiting in these long lines in and outside of urgent care, we need to make sure that we're not redoing this hallway medicine that the Liberals introduced, where instead of properly funding things, we're saying, okay, we'll go out in the hall, a nurse is going to talk to you. That's not appropriate. That's not what we need in Brampton. And of course, we're going to make sure that Brampton has 3 fully funded hospitals. That means turning Peel Memorial into a fully funded hospital and breaking ground and actually building a 3rd hospital in Brampton. Because cities like Mississauga, cities like Vaughan have more healthcare funding than us. They have more hospitals than us. We have 800,000 people, now maybe the 3rd biggest city in Ontario, just after Toronto and Ottawa, right? It's ridiculous, the situation here. And that situation, frankly, has been caused by Liberals and then Conservatives who are underfunding us, who don't care, who are not doing the things that need to be done. And when I see Liberals and Conservatives coming and making those promises, I don't trust them. I see people that have represented governments, that have cheered for governments, that just haven't been doing the work. And that's why we need to elect the Ontario NDP, a government that will do the work, that will build those hospitals, that will make sure that the region of Peel has the funding it needs, and that will make sure that folks in Brampton have access to the medicine the doctors, and the clinics that they need.
Thank you, Mr. Sargent. And we'll move to our last panel question, and we'll hear from Kristen.
Hi, I'm Kristen Nagel. I'm the Director of Government Relations and Strategic Partnerships at a nonprofit called Achieve. We are located in Brampton with 2 locations here and some more across the GTA, providing free government-funded services to community members, including in the employment and newcomer space. My question for you is related to immigration and skilled labor. We know that immigration is going to drop by about 20% over the next few years. I'm wondering what, if elected, your government's plan would be to ensure that we have the right skills to meet our economic needs.
Yeah, definitely for Brampton, this is a hot issue as the federal government scales back on immigration. The province is our, our day-to-day government, right? The one that we have contact with, the one that we deal with. When the federal government says stop immigration, the provincial government has to pick up the slack there. So one of the things that we need to make sure that governments thus far, liberal and conservative governments, haven't done is we need to make sure we are getting transferable skills and training people that come from other countries to work here, to do the jobs that they were trained in other countries to do. We have a tremendous amount of doctors from places like India and Pakistan and, frankly, the rest of the world, and they can't do their job here, and they end up being truckers, they end up being taxi drivers, which is not good. We need to make sure that these people are getting trained so that they can do the jobs that they were meant to do, that they were trained to do. For lawyers, we have transfer exams. If you go and you get trained in the U.S. at a U.S. law school, you come to Canada, you take a transfer exam, and then you can practice. We need to make sure that doctors have transfer courses, transfer exams, so that we can have doctors that were trained elsewhere in the world practicing here, so that those immigrants that came over that did years and years of school aren't, wasting that schooling and doing jobs that they, frankly, are overqualified for. Also, when it comes to dealing with immigration, I think one of the big things we're going to need to consider is trade. Right now, we're under threat from the U.S. for tariffs that are, pushed off a month, but still going to hit. And those universal 25% tariffs on steel, a material which Ontario ships a tremendous amount of over to the U.S. That's going to hurt our businesses. That's going to be tough. And I don't trust the Conservative government to negotiate on that. I don't trust the Conservative government, frankly, to support workers who are affected by that. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are going around the world and getting those partnerships, making sure that we are collaborating with other provinces to make sure that our barriers to trade are uniform and that we're taking down barriers to trade between provinces so that we can collaborate with people in Nova Scotia, in Quebec, all the way in BC, in Alberta, all these places that have phenomenally productive economies that we need to take advantage of to make sure that we are thriving as Canada while we are reducing immigration, from that federal level and dealing with tariffs from the U.S.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Mr. Sargent, for that. That takes us to the end of the formal conversation, but I do want to give you a couple of minutes to provide some closing remarks and to leave voters with a message about what they should know going into the polls on February 27th.
Yeah, thanks. What I think voters need to know going into the polls on February 27th is that, just ask yourself, how has your life been these past few years, these past 5, 6, 7 years? Has your life gotten better or worse? Have you felt that things are more affordable or less affordable? And look to your government in those past 6 or 7 years, liberals at the federal level, conservatives at the provincial level, and ask them, what have you been doing to help me? Why have you let this happen? And when we have people like the Liberal candidate in this riding coming in and making all these promises and saying how much he loves Brampton while his leader is saying, frankly, disgusting things about our city, do you trust that? Do you trust them to govern for you? Do you trust them to get you good jobs and more affordable prices? Frankly, I don't. So if you want to make sure that we have a better Brampton for tomorrow, a better Ontario for tomorrow, then I encourage you to vote for the Ontario NDP, myself, Sam Sargent, and Mara Stiles. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Sargent, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you again for making the time to watch. We hope you found these conversations inspiring and informative. A reminder that advanced polls open on February 20th and are open until the 22nd, and that Election Day is on February 27th. It's very important that you have your voice heard, and I encourage you, please make sure you get out and vote. If you'd like to watch videos of the other ridings, visit our Brampton Board of Trade YouTube page to see listed there, and you can see all the candidates that were available. Finally, if you'd like to learn more about what we're doing at the Brampton Board of Trade, visit our website at bramptonbot.com. Once again, thank you so much.